This year is the 160th anniversary of the sinking of the ill-fated ship, the Tayleur, which sank off Lambay Island near Rush, North County Dublin, on the 21st of January 1854. It gives me great pleasure to introduce an adventurous lost man, Laddie Dejon, to talk of his part in the diving to the wreck and what he discovered.
Well, the very first dive I ever went on, I was only a learner diver, and it was my first wreck dive that I went on. And I strayed away from the other lads because they were all going after the Delph. The Delph was very visible, and everybody went after the Delph, and I went away off down the back of the ship, it was actually. And I came across the binnacle, and I had a go at it with my knife to know what kind of metal it was, and I found out it was copper. And I thought at the time it was some kind of a ventilating hole. And there was years after, when I was with Miles Dockrell, Lord of mercy on him, he was my diving buddy. And he says the binnacle never was taken off the Tayleur. He says, and it must be still on it. And he says, do you know what a binnacle is? I didn't even know what a binnacle was at the time. Well, he says, the next time we dive, he says, I'll bring you in a book and I'll show you what a binnacle is. So the one he brought in was actually a square-headed one. And the minute I saw it on the book, I twigged. I had seen that down the back of the boat. And I said to myself, now that's what I'm going to have to chase after. About 10 minutes into the dive when I went out, I found it. And the mark is still on it where I marked it with the knife. And I was working at a porthole when I found it. And I'm pulling down clean water. And I just had the porthole off, and I looked up, and here was this sitting beside me. And I went over and had a look and pulled up, and I could see the compass swinging on the gimbals, the same as the day it went down. Next thing, air was gone. What am I going to do? I grabbed the porthole, blew me fency. That's the life jacket for to bring you up, and there's a second bottle on it, and it blows it up and it floats you to the surface. And I shouted to Miles, I have the binnacle. He said, shh, there wasn't one within miles of us. It was a weekday and there was no one out there. So, of course, none of us had air, could do nothing about it. So the very next day, we got air. I got the fella that worked with me go to Docky to get bottles blown, and out we went. And I had it marked on 2 headlands, and the first time I went down, I put a shot line on the anchor rope to go around in a circle to find this, do you see. First round I came across it. It was attached with those feet that you see there to the deck, and it was starting to blow a gale upstairs, so I says to myself, we had to get out of here quick. So I had to wring it off. I thought maybe that where it was bolted onto the deck would come, but no, the foot stayed behind. But we didn't mind that because we had the main thing, which was the binnacle. And up I went, got a rope, attached it to it, and started to haul it up. And southeasterly kept blowing harder and harder, and there's a kind of a bore there where that is, you see. And we started hauling it up. And when we got it to the gunnels, we couldn't load it because it's an awkward thing, and the two of us couldn't get pulling together. It was kind of crowded where we were. So I had to get out and get my shoulder under it. It was getting lighter at the time because there was sand in it, and with the action of the waves, the sand was washing out of it. So it was getting lighter. As you can see, it's a fairly light thing, you know. But I got under it in any case and got into the boat. Next thing, the waves started to come over the gunnels. Miles couldn't start the engine. And he had a second engine, so he says, I'll put that on. And I was loading all the gear up into the front of her to rise the stern of her so that she wouldn't be taking water. And he took off the engine and he put on the second engine. Couldn't start it either. And the water was coming across the gunnels all the time. So we were nearly being the second rate. So eventually he thought of what he had done wrong on the first engine. So he took the second engine off, put the first engine back on again, and we got going and we got in. The first dive the following year, we got the foot that we had left behind, and then it was complete. So we were very happy. We had the best trophy that a diver ever could get because it's unique. It's been quoted in textbooks all over the world as the thing that made the Tayleur go down, because she hadn't done a compass swing, so the compass had never been corrected. These pockets contained metal chains, and the chains to get the compass working properly would have had to been adjusted, but seeing as she never did a compass swing, she never had been adjusted, and they say that that was the main reason that she hit Lambay. The second reason was it took 5 miles to turn her, so they couldn't, and they had the sailors they had were all foreigners, and they couldn't work the sails at the time, and the rudder was also too small, because story goes that she was originally designed as a motor boat, for an engine, and that meant that you had the wash of the engine going across the rudder, and that made her steerable. But now when you put sail on her, you needed 3 times the size of a rudder. You needed the stern bringing the water to the rudder so that she steer, and that all was wrong design. It's covered up in a lot of the stories about the Tayleur, but it's I'd say it's one of the main reasons why we have the Tayleur here, and she was only 100 miles from where she was built. Even where she was built was a very crooked, shallow kind of river, and they had to wait on a spring tide, and they had to wait on 2 tides before they got her into the Mersey, and then she was properly ballasted and rigged out there. But they were in a hurry because she was the White Star Line, but they were beginning to go broke at the time, and they needed her in a hurry. So then they thought the quickest way was put sail on her. What are they, a 5-foot tombstone? And of course, going to what would you say, a new country, they needed tombstones, do you see. It was ballast plus cargo, because if they hadn't got that, they'd have had to put in just ordinary rocks into it, or anything to make it heavy, because those masts were very heavy, and with a lot of sail on them, they had to have something to keep the boat upright. There was all sorts of slate lentils then as well, farm machinery, anything to do with emigrants, do you see, to supply them when they went there. Now there's another story attached to that. When we took it up upright, and it was floated on 6 5-gallon drums. And you brought your drum down full of water, you brought a bottle down with it, and you bled your bottle into the 6 drums, and the 6 drums just rose the thing to the surface. And when we got it to the surface, there's big currents, I don't know, you know the nose, there are big currents, there's a corner in Lambay, and there's a couple of different currents there. It was turning the tombstone so that we couldn't pull it with the boat. So we had to throw it up on rocks. And we waited for the tide to go down, and we attached the 6 drums to float it horizontally. And of course she was easy towed then. Once you had her horizontally, she skimmed then, do you see. She actually floated up with the speed of the boat, you see. And don't know what to tell you the story about going in. We brought it into Lambay because we were running out of fuel, into the harbour. And we asked Lord Revelstoke, could we leave it there overnight, and we collected it in the morning. So he wouldn't let us leave it there. For what reason, I don't know. But we had to tow it to Rogerstown, just at the mouth of Rogerstown. Miles was after going ahead to get fuel, and I towed it to the mouth of Rogerstown. Just as we got to the mouth of Rogerstown, tide changed. And of course she floated up on the tide, and he met me halfway in the river. And it was doing as a notice board for the sailing club for a long time in Rogerstown. And then when they were doing the job on the boat yard there, she was shifted, and Percy Dunn took it into care. And then Breda Doctor said to me one day, she said, that tombstone, she said, that should be in the museum in Dollabay. So I said, right, we'll go to Percy and we'll get it. And that's how it's come here then. We brought it here then. And there's about 50 more of them, I suppose, or more on that boat still. And a lot of them are actually almost cemented together with the calcareous growth that comes on them down there. Now we also took about 13 portholes off her. Now the portholes, they were on the ribs, the boat collapsed outwards, and there was sand then built up on the actual side of the boat, covering over the portholes, and we didn't find them, of course, being down in the sand. But there were some divers came over from Wales, and they knew all about diving on wrecks because they had tons of wrecks out there with the war and that kind of thing. And they came over especially to get portholes, but then they had to leave it. So they taught us how to find these portholes. There were ribs, you see, holding the plates together, the plates to the side of the boat. And every 6th in one spot, and every 7th, you had a porthole out at a certain distance from the boat. So that's how we got so many portholes. And we've donated a lot of them. There's one down in the museum ship down in Wexford. There's another is a prize for the mermaids in Rush. And I don't know, I've lost, I won. It's there actually. Do you want to see that? That's the porthole, and a massive porthole it is, because I've portholes of other ships as well, and there's none of them as strong as that. All handmade, different metals on the plate that holds it onto the ship as the plate that was there. And the rubber actually inside in that is that rubber. It's still rubber. You can still feel after 160 years it's still rubber. Look at how strong that is. Some of them you could nearly bend them with your hands on some of the boats. But a massive ship. She was the flagship of the White Star Line, and she was the Titanic of her day, and she did the same thing as the Titanic done, only she did it nearer home. Yeah. There was another thing that was taken off, quite a good story attached to it too. The boss of the wheel. Now there had been an attempt made to take the boss off her by attaching the rope to it on low tide and waiting on the tide to pull it off, you see, but it tore the wheel asunder actually. But it was the only thing we got with the Tayleur on it. And some of the boys, they had taken 2 portholes, and there were 3 of them. And one lad didn't get a porthole, do you see? Now I think I tell the story wrong. There was 3 portholes taken. One lad took 2 portholes, another lad took 1, and one lad got none. So they found the boss, but they were out of air at the time they found the boss. And he rang us where the boss was. It was on the H girder. Now everybody knew the H girder on the Tayleur. It was the steering gear. Now we never recognised it as a steering gear till we found the boss on it. And then we knew it was the steering gear. But he rang us that it was Sean Sheridan at the time. He was going to go out for the next day early, do you see, to take it off. And we got there before him. Now we were nearly out of air too, so we had sent a lad for air. Miles dropped me on it with a float upstairs, highly illegal, and I had a hacksaw and a new hacksaw blade, and it was very soft metal to saw through actually, and I got it off in jig time, and I brought it up to the float I had upstairs, and threw it up on the rocks over here and sat over there in case Sean Sheridan would come and bully me off it or something like that. And Miles come back and we put it into the boat. Next thing we see Sean Sheridan coming over the horizon, and Miles, great, I don't know if they ever knew Miles or not, but he had a great sense of humour, you know. And he throws it down the bottom of the boat and he throws a plastic bag on it, and of course Sean come up and pull alongside. Grand day for diving, yeah, lovely day. There's not much left down there, Miles says. He says, I think I'll go down in any case. Sean says, like, you know, I think I'll go down in any case. And then there'll be another whole conversation of like all the stuff that was taken off, and there wasn't much left and that kind of thing. And Sean was mad to go, like he knew the spots. He thought this boss was down there, you see. And Miles says to him, he says, you needn't go down. He says, we have it. And Sean didn't want to recognise what we had. He was hope against hope that we hadn't the boss that he was going for, you know. So after another half an hour's conversation, Jenny, eventually Sean, he says to Sean again, he says, oh, he says, we got it. What did you get? Oh, he says it's there. And this went on. You'd break your heart laughing the way this pantomime was going on, you know. And eventually he made Sean come in and take the plastic bag. You want to see a face dropping? Well, we were glad we got it because they sold everything that they got off her, like, you know, and we preserved everything, sort of thing, so at least it was preserved, you know. The pottery, yeah. Yeah, we set up a dredging system, and that meant bleeding a pipe, in a small pipe of air into a bigger pipe, and putting the mouth of the bigger pipe down on the sand, and that sucked up the sand. The bubbles going up the pipe created a vacuum, you see, and the sand disappeared, and then you could get at the pottery, do you see. It was in a load of crates and packed with straw. And we took over 1,000 pieces, but it was all seconds where it was made because it all deteriorated with the time down there, and the glaze actually flaked off it. And there are some pieces not bad, but you can even see the marks on that there. And we got up a medical chest, and that was all sorts of flimsy bottles and things like that with all sorts of potions in them. And stinking stuff it was. When you brought it up, with the pressure that was in it, you see, some of it exploded, you know. And I still have some of those bottles at home, interesting enough in their own. We brought up a canteen, a silver handled cutlery. And that was at the side of the boat. Miles was hammering away at one of those stone jars. And he was going sort of carefully to try and not break it. But then I was next down, and he was running out of air, do you see, and he said, be very careful of that. And when I went down, I saw all these silver fingers sticking up. And I sort of said to myself, has to be silver. There was no chrome in those days. In any case, chrome would have deteriorated like down there. So there it was, a whole canteen packed in leather, rolled in leather, whole canteen of silver-handled cutlery. I still have it at home, some of it. Now, Miles had half it and I had half of it. And the idea again was to bring it to Newbridge and get the blades were all rusted, of course. The blades were rusted out. It was only the handles that were left. We got the safe, and when we got into the safe, we thought we were right with money. But that had been when she went down originally. That had been opened by the hard hat divers, and they had taken any money that was in it out of it. Now there was counterfeit money in it, counterfeit gold in it actually, and the original people had brought that on another ship to Australia, and they had actually been found with it out there, and they had been arrested. So that was all, and we got a shotgun, the remains of a shotgun in it. The boss was still there, but of course there was very little of the barrels left, you know. There was some of the barrels left as well. The way they had to plumb it was, they plumbed it, they had a delf bowl, and it was cased in lead. And the idea of casing it in lead was they couldn't plumb the delf bowl to the system, you see, to the series system they had, but the lead they could, you see, because with the movement of the boat there was movement in the lead, you see, so it didn't puncture, you know. But that was from the Royal Suite. Now we also found the remains of a washhand basin with the same design on it, delf washhand basin, and that was the Royal Suite on her. She must have been some ship. There was a unique flushing system on it too. Now, that pipe going up into the top of it, of course, that was the water coming in, you see. And then, of course, the excrement going out, I suppose, was underneath.